Stop for a second. This isn't just another video. Because if you clicked on this, there's a high chance someone has already tried to reach you, and you missed it. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't recognize what it actually looked like. Carl Jung once hinted at something unsettling, that the messages that matter most rarely arrive in obvious ways. They don't come labeled, they don't come loudly, and most people overlook them entirely. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever had a strange feeling that someone was on your mind more than usual, and you couldn't explain why? Not in a dramatic way, just subtle, quiet, like a thought that keeps tapping your shoulder and then disappearing. You brush it off. You tell yourself it's random. But what if it's not? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Sometimes the person who loves you the most isn't the one constantly texting you, calling you, or flooding your notifications. In fact, it's often the opposite. They hold back. They hesitate. They send signals that are easy to miss unless you're paying attention in a very specific way. And most guys miss this completely. You've probably been in a situation like this, where someone responds a little slower than expected, but when they do, there's depth. Not just hey or what's up, but something slightly more intentional. Maybe they remember small details about you that you don't even remember sharing. Maybe their tone shifts depending on your mood, almost like they're adjusting to you without making it obvious. Did you notice that? Because that's not casual behavior. That's someone observing you closely. Someone emotionally invested but careful. And that carefulness? It's not disinterest. It's fear of getting it wrong. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Real emotional attachment often hides behind restraint. Not intensity, not loud affection. Restraint. Sounds backwards, right? But Jung believed that what we suppress, what we don't express directly, often carries more truth than what we openly display. So when someone holds back, when they don't say everything they feel, when they choose silence over risking rejection, that silence starts to carry meaning. And if you're not tuned in, you'll misread it completely. You'll assume they don't care. You'll assume they're distant. You might even pull away, exactly when they were hoping you'd lean in just a little. Pause for a second and really think about this. Has there ever been someone who showed up for you in subtle ways? Not grand gestures, not over-the-top attention, but consistency. A certain presence. Someone who didn't disappear when things got quiet. Someone who stayed, even when there was nothing to gain. That's not accidental. That's someone choosing you, without announcing it. But here's where it gets even more interesting. In public, they might seem normal, controlled, maybe even slightly detached. But in private, their energy shifts, their tone softens, their messages become a little longer, a little more thoughtful. There's a contrast there, and that contrast is a signal. Most people ignore it. They chase the loud, obvious attention, the validation, the excitement. Meanwhile, the deeper connection, the one that actually has substance, slips right past them. And then later they say something like, I had no idea they felt that way. But the truth is, the signs were there, just not in the form they expected. Let me challenge you on something. What if the person who loves you isn't trying to impress you, but trying not to lose you? That changes everything. Because now their behavior makes sense. The hesitation, the careful wording, the moments where they almost say something and then pull back. That's not confusion. That's emotional risk management. They're protecting something real. And here's the part that might hit a little deeper. Sometimes they won't tell you directly, not because they don't want to, but because they don't believe it's safe yet. So instead, they send indirect signals. They stay close. They watch. They wait. And you're left interpreting fragments. But if you start connecting those fragments, Patterns begin to emerge, a certain timing in their replies, a subtle shift when you mention someone else, a quiet curiosity about your life that doesn't feel casual. These are not random behaviors. These are emotional fingerprints, hidden signals, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Ignoring these signals doesn't just mean missing out on someone. It means missing a version of connection that most people spend years chasing without realizing it was already within reach. So the question becomes, why do we ignore it? Simple. Because it doesn't match the story we've been told. We've been conditioned to look for obvious attraction, fast responses, clear validation, instant chemistry. But real emotional depth? It moves slower, quieter. It requires attention, not just reaction. And most people are too distracted to notice. But you're still here, which means something about this resonates. So here's that urgent message you didn't expect. Someone has already tried to show you how they feel, just not in the way you were looking for. And if you think back carefully, you probably already know who it is. The one who stayed consistent. The one who didn't need to perform. The one whose presence felt steady, even when everything else felt uncertain. That wasn't coincidence. That was intention, quietly expressed. Now the real question is, what are you going to do with that awareness? Because once you notice these patterns in real life, you'll never see human behavior the same way again. Subscribe for more insights.